Managing your mental health is not about sustaining your current level of effectiveness. It's about being able to thrive and completely beat it. People make decisions better. They make decisions quicker. People have more clarity.
Okay, I know that this applause is not for me.
It is.
So hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jack Arthur. I'm the head of human capital management here, and I am beyond thrilled to have Jay Shetty joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. Genuinely wonderful to see you all, and thank you so much for having me.
So among many hats we will speak about during this session today, Jay is the Chief Purpose Officer of Calm. So if you're with us in the auditorium or watching the live stream, I suspect Jay is well known to you. Perhaps you're already one of his 50 million followers on social media, or regularly watch his incredibly popular, or listen to his incredibly popular podcast On Purpose, or have read his best-selling books, Think Like a Monk, or 8 Rules of Love. Or perhaps you've already started opening your Calm app for your daily dose of Jay. But one of the things I heard Jay say that I loved is that he's dedicated to helping others find their purpose, which I just thought was so profound. So Jay's provided wisdom and inspiration to so many, and I'm really excited to welcome him to Goldman Sachs. You're obviously incredibly comfortable with meditation, but I know it hasn't always been that way. So can you tell us a little bit about how your path to mindfulness and meditation began?
So I was really fortunate that I got introduced to this when I was around 18 years old, when I first met a monk and really started to understand about the ancient practices that existed. But it was actually many years later when I came back that I was studying mindfulness and learning about it from a scientific perspective. And I remember interviewing an incredible Buddhist monk named Matthieu Ricard, who's been dubbed the happiest man in the world. And when his brain was scanned, they found that he had the happiest brain on the planet, which meant that he had the highest records of presence, learning, and joy. And they were actually able to see this through the scan. And so for me, I've had this really phenomenal journey with mindfulness and meditation where it's been this ancient wisdom track, and then my fascination with neuroscience and modern science and how those two come together is what's always been my passion with meditation and mindfulness. And I think the work that I've been doing with Calm has really been trying to bring those two ancient and modern arts together. And so my journey's been from one side to the other with mindfulness. And I found that often what we experience is that our body's either ahead of our breath or our breath's ahead of our body. Let me give you an example. You wake up in the morning and the first thought you have is, oh, I just want to stay in bed. How many of you had that this morning? Don't let your manager see. Yeah. So your mind is saying, I'm done. I don't want to go anywhere. And your body's saying, no, we need to get to work, right? We know what that feels like. Or we experience the opposite. How many times do you wake up in the morning and your body's so tired, but your mind's going, I've got a million things to do, right? Everyone's experienced that? And so we always experience this misalignment of the body and the mind. And so when you breathe in with the movement of your body and breathe out with the movement of your body, you're saying, I'm here right now. I'm realigning my body and my breath. I'm realigning my mind and my body.
So interesting. So you talk about meeting the happiest man in the world, and ultimately that led you down a path to actually become a monk for several years. I think many have probably read or are aware of that path and kind of how it led to, some of the, areas of focus today. But I don't know how many people actually know that you were at that point in your life, you were studying business in college. You actually interned at a financial services organization, from my understanding. And then you later went on to work at Accenture. Mm-hmm. How do those two seemingly opposed worlds, and you actually did that after having been a monk, which I think must have been just an amazing contrast. You probably needed all of that resilience you had built up. But how do those two seemingly opposed worlds, business and mindfulness, inform each other in any way?
So I have a confession to make. I didn't get accepted to Goldman Sachs.
Was that one of the 40 places you sent a resume?
I got rejected twice. So the first time for an internship and the second time for a real grad job. But yes, I was studying at Cass Business School at the time, Bayes Business School now, and I was studying management science with a focus on behavioral science. I was always fascinated by why people do what they do. And so as I was studying this, I really believed that I would get a job in banking, and if not, a consulting firm, right? That's how it goes. And so I assumed that that would be my path of work. And when I met this monk who went to IIT, the Indian Institute of Technology, he was from India, and I was just blown away as to how someone could give up that career path that he'd built for himself and trade it all to become a monk. And for my 18-year-old self, I just couldn't imagine how someone could trade this incredible opportunity, incredible career path, incredible education that he'd worked so hard for in order to serve, in order to understand mental mastery. And as I studied with him and then went on to study further myself, I started to realize just how many connections and parallels there were between these two seemingly opposite worlds. And what I mean by that is, I think we don't recognize how much our whole life is built not on memory and on repetition, but is actually based on focus and presence. I think when we went to school, there was memory, there was being able to repeat something that you'd learned in the past, there was the ability to know what questions you were going to be asked in the interview and answer them perfectly, although I didn't. Right? Like there was all of this method that we thought worked. And then you finally get into the actual organization and you think to yourself, well, wait a minute, none of that works anymore. Like now it's all real time. Like there's no rehearsal anymore. This is all happening in real time. The data I see, the updates I see, the numbers are real. It's not a case study anymore. And all of a sudden the pressure increases. All of a sudden the stress increases. And so to me, the tools of mindfulness and meditation are so much at the heart of making us better at what we do, that when I went to the monastery and studied, and I lived and traveled across India, the UK, and Europe during my time as a monk, all I was thinking was, this is so relevant to all of my friends back home in London. This is so relevant to the people I grew up around, because they actually need this more than ever, and I needed it, and I wanted to come back and share it. And so many years later, when I finally got a job at Accenture, so after I left the monastery, I applied to 40 companies. Goldman Sachs was again one of them. And I'm a sucker for failure, obviously. Yeah. And I applied to these 40 companies genuinely, and all of them rejected me before an interview because, surprise, surprise, who wants to hire a former monk? Everyone's thinking, what are your transferable skills? Being silent and sitting still. Like, we don't need that in our company. And so I'm figuring it out, and finally Accenture gives me a job. And so I'm like 25, going on 26, joining Accenture's grad program. And I'm sitting there around all these, people who are 21 years old, coming fresh out of university, college. And I'm thinking, how does this make sense? And we did this icebreaker on day one where you had to write an interesting fact about yourself. And my interesting fact was that I lived as a monk and I know how to meditate. And it was really interesting to me because so many people started to get really intrigued by that. And this is back in 2013. And a lot of my colleagues would ask me about the practices, and I would share them in small groups. And an event like this didn't look like this. It was 2 people who showed up to my first meditation session inside Accenture. But I just saw that people were really looking for this. And I was so grateful to see that people were searching for different methods. And I'm so grateful to see all of you here today looking for a different method, because just because we didn't learn it at school doesn't mean we can't learn it now. And it doesn't mean it doesn't have a benefit in the world we live in.
Totally. And I love the fact that, you're so successful now. And just the breadth of people you've impacted around the world with what you do is just so incredibly impressive. But I love the fact that you're very honest, and this has not been a linear journey for you. This has been a journey of, different choices and having to really rely on your instincts and navigating those choices and taking what you can. But I guess on that, I'm curious if the opposite has been true for you as well. So you talked about how mindfulness can impact business positively and performance in business. But did your time in business actually benefit how you pursue mindfulness? That's
such a great question. I'm really happy I get to answer it with all of you. I do think there's this belief that these two worlds are so opposite, they should be kept separate, they should be different. And I think, platforms like Calm show how the two can come together and how something can become scalable and accessible, yet hold true to these incredible practices that exist. For me, a lot of my work is based on this brilliant thought from Martin Luther King. And he said this, I can't remember when, but it's a really powerful statement. I'll repeat it for you. He said that the people who love peace need to learn to organize themselves as well as those who love war. And I'll say that again. He said the people that love peace need to learn to organize themselves as well as those who love war. And what I mean by that is businesses are hyper-organized, they're focused, they're driven, they have core mission. A lot of the time, meditation tradition, spirituality has been kind of fluffy and woo-woo. And because of that, it hasn't had the ability to scale and become accessible to people at large. And so I've definitely believed that it's part of my mission, and this is something I learned from having studied business, of having worked in the business world, is imagine if we could be organized about the distribution of these incredible ideas, if we could be organized and focused and diligent in the way we are about work, if we could do that about mindfulness, imagine how many more people will take to it. And so when I started my work, that was my hope and mission and intention, that if I was organized, that if I was focused, if I could take the acumen that I'd learned in the business world and be able to pair that with mindfulness, then it actually may reach more people. Otherwise, it will be reserved for the few people in the monastery who trade their entire life and decide to take everything away from their life and go and do that. And I was just like, 99% of people are never going to do that. So how do we take it out to the 99% if we really believe this is a helpful solution? So I think business has definitely inspired and impacted me in my sharing of mindfulness, for sure.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. So just pivoting a bit to mental health, you're passionate about using mindfulness and meditation to improve overall mental health. And it's a topic that we hear more about, more than ever, I would say these days, kind of post-pandemic. It's something we're certainly trying to train and embed within our own wellness programs here. But I would say there's still some people who remain cynical or skeptical about these concepts. What's the biggest misconception about mindfulness that you want to debunk?
Okay, great question. So first of all, I try not to spend...
You just said woo-woo.
Yeah. I would say that today there are so many great journals, research studies, statistics, and analysis from the top colleges that you all probably attended that justify and substantiate the power of mindfulness and meditation. And I think anyone who's well-read or is out there seeking that information, it exists. And so I don't even need to repeat all of that. It exists out there. But I would say, so I don't think that it being woo-woo or not being real is a valid issue anymore. I don't think it's a valuable insight anymore to think that these things don't work. They're scientifically proven to work. I would say that the biggest myth to debunk is that there's one way of meditating. There's one way of practicing mindfulness. I think a lot of people feel that if they can't just sit there and switch off and turn off their mind, that they are not a good meditator or they're not good at mindfulness. And often what's really interesting is that we've all trained ourselves in our critical mind, not our critical thinking mind, that we often find ourselves just running in spirals of self-judgment and self-criticism. Oh my gosh, I'm the worst meditator. Oh my God, I'm not good at this. I can't do this. I can't get this right. Oh my God, only if my manager could see how bad I am at meditating, right? Like there's this feeling that we develop that we're just not good at it. And I think what's really interesting about that is that it's really tough when we've been trained to overanalyze and judge everything we do to that degree. We actually lose the mindful practice of giving ourselves grace. So in that scenario, in that situation, grace and compassion is actually going to help you get back to growth. I always talk about how guilt blocks growth. Guilt stops you from improving. It doesn't make you better. It makes you worse. And so the mindful principle in that scenario is, can I actually give myself some grace and space and move forward? Mindfulness in that moment is not, well, force yourself to just shut up and sit down, right? Like that isn't the goal. And so I think that's a big issue with our perception of mindfulness. And I think that comes from how we've started to see our bodies and minds like technology. So we know we can turn off our phone and turn it on. And I think we try and do the same with our bodies. Like, why don't I go to sleep immediately when my head hits the pillow? Right? Why doesn't that happen? None of us turn our laptops off, let's be honest, right? No matter how many training sessions you've had about security, everyone leaves their laptop running the whole time. And we're doing that with our bodies. And then, of course, there's a glitch, and so it feels. But if our bodies and our minds don't do what we want when we want, we think there's something wrong with them. And so I think that, again, is a lack of mindfulness, not forcing us to think, oh, I should be able to turn off and on just like my phone or just like a Uber Eats order or whatever else it may be, that instant feeling. And so mindfulness is actually being patient. Mindfulness is observing the seasons. Mindfulness is recognizing that some things that grow during the summer don't grow during the winter. Mindfulness is realizing that in New York right now, I need a coat and I need an umbrella, and I was just in Miami and I was wearing flip-flops, right? Like, that's what mindfulness is the ability to adapt to your scenario, not the reason to force yourself to behave in a certain way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally resonates with me. I mean, I started running for health, but I actually have kept running for many years now because it's the one place where I can clear my head. Mm-hmm. And so I think of it almost as a form of moving meditation because, to your point, I don't have my phone in my hand. Like, I'm not looking at an email or thinking about what I have to do next at work. It's the time where I actually feel most centered, and it actually helps me to perform better when I stop running. But I have tried more still versions of meditation, and I'm not as successful. My mind drifts, and I judge myself for that. So, because we all judge ourselves for, we all want to perform at our very best in everything we do, and that's a Goldman Sachs mindset. I know probably resonates for many of you. We've got a very busy audience here, and I know we all want to focus on mindfulness, meditation, things that are going to help us to kind of build that perspective. But finding time to do that in the course of a busy day can be a challenge. So what are some small things that you think about pragmatically that can help people to manage stress during a workday without adding another task to a to-do list?
Absolutely. I think for a lot of us, we're still looking at health and wellness as, I'm trying to get something done in the morning. Like, I'm trying to get 30 minutes in the morning or the 30 minutes in the evening, and then everything in between is just whatever it is, right? That's very natural, and that happens to me too. Obviously now I'm far busier. I'm traveling. Like, yesterday I just landed from Miami. Today I fly out to Arizona. Like, my schedule's completely intense as well. And one thing I've found is that it's actually all the moments in between that make me feel better and have a bigger impact on me. So I'm not saying that the morning and evening are not important and you shouldn't have a morning or evening routine. I'm a big believer in that. But at the same time, one of my favorite habits has been to make sure that every hour I get up from wherever I'm sitting and I walk, I move around, I go up to a window and I look outside. And what I mean by that is, and I'll tell you why, is so many of us are constantly looking at things that are so close to us. Our phones, our laptops, our screens, everything is kind of feeling quite claustrophobic and crowded and can make you feel kind of overwhelmed by the amount of information you're consuming. The ability to look out of a window and look as far into the distance as you possibly can, whether it's at a bird, the top of a building in New York, a tree in the distance, the ability to allow your eyes to just stretch and have some space. We talk about physical stretching, but allowing your eyes to stretch. And finally, drinking water, getting hydrated. So I always tell people, walking, window, and water every hour, just that simple step can actually shift how you feel throughout the day. So now you no longer have to think, oh my gosh, I missed my meditation in the morning, I'm falling behind, I won't have any time later on, I've got a dinner to go to, I've got a networking event, I've got to work late today. Where it's like, yeah, I don't need to overthink it. Maybe I've got 30 seconds every hour to stand up and walk, to look out of a window and grab some water. If I just did that, then that is my mindfulness practice for today. And so I think, again, giving yourself grace and giving yourself the space to say, I'm going to find these mini moments of presence. I'm going to find it throughout my day. And, I've said to people for a long time, I think 60-minute or 30-minute meetings should be completely banned. And they should be, there's no need. It could be 23 minutes. It can be, 52 minutes. You'll have so much more time back. No one ever says anything useful at the beginning or end of the meeting anyway. And it's so important that we start looking at our schedule like that and going, actually, I'm going to schedule 3 minutes every hour. And that's what I'm going to do with it. Or maybe I am going to do a 3-minute meditation on a nap. Or maybe I am going to take 3 minutes out just to breathe at my desk. But I'm going to take that out every hour rather than trying to look for 30 minutes or 20 minutes at the beginning or the end of a day, which you know you're going to lose out on.
Totally. So, okay, walking, window, water. I think we can all take that away from today. Okay, so pivoting, you just mentioned you have an incredibly busy schedule. So you're an author, a coach, a podcast host, consultant, educator, philanthropist. It goes on, you have a talent agency, you have a line of beverages. How do you manage your time? How do you prioritize amongst all those things? And how do you hold it all together?
I sleep really well. So there's a background of, my life is hyper-focused on my purpose, and therefore everything is about what I'm trying to do in the world. And so there is a certain level of discipline where everything's been organized and orchestrated in a way for me to be at high performance all the time. But I would say that it's my team. It's the people around me. It's really not me. I wouldn't be able to do everything on that list without the people around me. And I think what's really interesting is that we often think about that in a professional sense of the people around you. But I actually think that's also true in the personal sense of the people around you. And one of my favorite tips or reflections that I'd like you all to do when you walk out of here is I'd like you to write down a list of all your personal needs, of things that you enjoy, things that you'd like to do. It may be like you have a deep need for adventure in your life. You have a deep need for health in your life. You have a deep need for a joy in your life, whatever that list is for you personally. And then I want you to think of the person in your life that brings that to your life. And literally go down and write a name next to each one of those qualities that you look for. And also think about the people that you're that person for as well. Who are you turning up for in that way? And what I find is that we need teams in our personal lives. Often our partner or our spouse becomes the number one person who has to manage all of our stress. Often our colleague at work becomes the person that we vent to. And so we have one person who carries all of our weight, right? You all have that one friend who only reaches out to you. And then we all have that other friend who reaches out to the whole group text and asks 80 people the same question. Like, should I really be dating this guy, right? And in both cases, we're making a mistake. So what we do as humans is we either depend on one person or we ask everyone. And the answer is actually, can I build up intentional, conscious, clear relationships with how someone helps me and how I help them? And so I know if I'm going through a personal issue, I know which friend I'm going to call. I know if I'm going through a particular challenge in one of those areas or an idea, I know who I'm going to call. And I think we all need to create personal teams as much as we have professional teams. Because you may be thinking right now, you may be like, Jay, I don't have a team. I am the team. I'm that person for other people. And I get that. I've been there too. When I was at Accenture, I was a new analyst, a new consultant. I didn't have a team. I was the team. And in that scenario, I realized my personal team was so important, right? My mentors were so important. And so I would encourage everyone in this room to build that personal team, to build that personal wise advisors, counsel of people you reach out to when you have certain things. I would never be able to do any of those things without the incredible team that I have today.
So you mentioned your set of personal advisors. What else do you do to recharge and reset when you're feeling stressed or anxious? And what are some things that this group could take away in terms of particular moments of high stress, anxiety, in terms of best practices?
Yeah, I think that what's really interesting is that we always have a choice when we're feeling stress. And our conditioning is to choose to escape instead of to elevate. And I'll explain what I mean by those two words. So let me walk you through a scenario. You wake up in the morning, whatever time you wake up. I wake up at like around 5:45 usually. I wake up and sometimes even my first thought of the day is, oh, I am so tired, right? Anyone feel that way when they first wake up in the morning? I'm so tired, right? Now you make it through to breakfast somehow. You've had your morning coffee or whatever you drink personally or tea or whatever it is. You made it through to breakfast and you're looking at the watch and you're going, how is it only 9 a.m.? I'm so tired, right? Now you make it through to midday, you're going to miss lunch because you got busy meetings, you got work on, you're going to miss lunch, you're going to skip lunch, and you're thinking, gosh, I'm so tired. How is it only midday? Finally, you make it through to 6 p.m. You know you need to work 2 more hours, and you're thinking, I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. But then somehow at 10:37 p.m., you click next episode on Netflix and you watch another episode, right? And that cycle perpetuates. I've done it too, by the way, right? Like I'm not pointing fingers. I do this too. And that cycle can perpetuate for weeks, right? Let alone days. That cycle can go on for weeks where you're living in this thought of I'm so tired. And what's really interesting with that is we chose to escape, which was watching a show or, you know, just whatever else it may have been, like, oh, we went out with our friends, whatever. And none of those things are wrong. And I'm not saying we shouldn't
having a glass of wine.
Yeah, whatever it may be. And I'm not saying any of those things are wrong. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things. I'm saying that if you've got into a pattern where this has been a multi-week repetition of I'm so tired, it's time to look at, have you been choosing too much escape and not enough elevating? And what I mean by that is that night, going to sleep early will benefit you more and decompress your body and mind more than any TV show on the planet, even one day, right? Like, it doesn't matter what show it is. It will make such a difference if you allow yourself to fall asleep. It will make such a difference if you chose to fall asleep and wake up the next morning and move, as opposed to, again, having that extra lie-in because you went to sleep later. Studies show that when we go to sleep before midnight, the human growth hormone, HGH, is more activated than after midnight. So if you sleep from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., those 8 hours are more valuable than midnight to 8 a.m. So sometimes you're thinking, why am I still tired? I got 6 hours, I got 7 hours. But the hours after midnight just don't have the same impact as the hours before. And so I think for so many of us, we're running out of steam because we're not allowing ourselves to shift. And by the way, it's so natural. Of course we want to watch that extra episode. Of course we want to have the glass of wine. Of course, that's natural. It's normal to do that. But we have to disrupt that pattern. And the pattern disruption comes when we say, you know what? And this is something I do. I say, you know what? I need to cancel plans tonight. I need to have an early night. You know what? This weekend, I know I've got a million things to do, but actually some of that stuff can shift so I can get some more rest. You know what? Actually, I am going to listen to that podcast or that meditation episode as opposed to watching TV. You know, I'm going to find what is that little shift that I can make, the tiniest shift that's going to put me in the right direction rather than waiting for like this big vacation that we wait for, right? Oh, I'm going to wait till I can take 7 days off. I'm going to wait till, and you know, in my company, we have unlimited paid time off and no one ever takes it. And it's fascinating to me just how easy it is to keep putting off this big vacation. And what I tell my team all the time is, take longer weekends more often. Take shorter breaks more often because you're never going to struggle. You're always going to struggle to take that 1 week, 2 week, 3 weeks off. But imagine you got another 3-day weekend in, how much more powerful that would be for your mind. So I think for me, I'm consciously trying to make those little shifts rather than waiting for these big moments.
So you work with companies all around the world on different topics like resilience, purpose, innovation. But in your experience, what are some of the best ways that leading companies are offering support to their people in this regard?
When I was at Accenture, I was trying to help out build some of the same things because Accenture, again, was another organization that was putting mental health as a priority. And I remember we had everything from like meditation Mondays, where every managing director would start a company meeting on a Monday with a meditation as a group. And it was those small shifts, again, that started to have these big impacts as things went on. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen is events like this helping people recognize that mental health and high performance go hand in hand. They're not one against the other. People think if you're not a high performer, that's why you need to take care of your mental health. And I would argue it's completely the opposite. If you're a high performer, you need to refine your mental health even more to stay at that level and actually get even better. And I'm saying this because through my work and through my podcast, I get to sit down with the top athletes in the world. And so if anyone's a tennis fan, if you look at someone like Novak Djokovic, Novak practices mindfulness and meditation. And if you watch him play tennis, you know that it translates. And he himself would credit mindfulness and meditation and the maintenance of his physical health and his diet having a big impact on his performance on the court. I had the fortune of sitting down with Lewis Hamilton last year, if you're into Formula One. Lewis, again, is a meditator. When you're driving at the speeds he's driving at, right, over whatever, like 160 miles per hour, the ability to stay present and focused and mindfulness is all that's required. You're all athletes. You're all dealing with high performance in that way, but we don't get taught about it that way. We think the longer hours we clock, the more successful we are. Lewis Hamilton doesn't think that. Like, do you know what I mean? It's this belief that we have that doing more results in more, and actually what ends up happening for most people is doing more results in less, because you can't stay at that high performance point that you've reached again and again. And then what happens is you're trying to sustain rather than beat and thrive. And I think that's what's interesting about managing your mental health. Managing your mental health is not about sustaining your current level of effectiveness. It's about being able to thrive and completely beat it. And so as someone who values high performance myself, I've actually found that they make decisions better. They make decisions quicker. People have more clarity. So your decision's actually something you stick with. You have the ability to notice how it's going to impact other people and how that decision is going to affect other people's emotions in a space. And so I feel events like this, the training programs that you have, it's to help shift that culture and having these conversations openly in recognizing that high performance and mental health are not at all mutually exclusive. They actually go completely hand in hand. And every top athlete and every top business person that I know, with the people that I've sat down with, Ray Dalio's been a constant guest on the show. And again, another individual who credits meditation and mindfulness as being a core practice for his success in the business world. And I could go on and on and on with names, but I'm sharing all of those to say, well, if this is what the top 1% in their fields are saying, then there's obviously truth. And a lot of these people built these habits when they were starting out, not when they were at these phases in their life.
All right, I love the linkage of performance and mental health. Calm has recently introduced, as part of a series of programs, a 7 days of growth series. How is growth setting different from goal setting?
Absolutely.
What can we learn from that? And
how many of you are still, be honest, how many of you are still practicing the New Year's resolution that you set, if you set one at the start of 2024? Raise your hands.
Wow.
Thank you for being honest. Very honest audience. I appreciate it. Usually I'm in an audience full of people who just all put up their hands.
Good for you guys for still being honest.
Yeah. First of all, congrats to all of those of you who have. And for those of you who haven't, that's the normal experience. Studies show that 80% of people drop off with their New Year's resolutions by the end of January. So you're not weak, you're not abnormal, you're not getting something wrong. It's what happens every single year. And as Calm and I were looking at this and we were deeply diving into why we think that is, it's because we started to realize that most of our goals are these pie in the sky, arbitrary ideas that we hope for. So I want to get in shape this year. I want to, whatever that means. I want to get to the gym 5 days a week, even though I never go to the gym and I hate the gym, right? I want to wake up an hour earlier, although I'm not sleeping an hour earlier, right? So we have these lofty goals. And we've all heard about SMART goals and things like that and everything, and still it seems to not work. And what I realized was that behind the goals that we want, the hidden part, the subtle part that we don't figure out is a quality, a trait, or an attribute that I call growth. So for example, if I want to wake up earlier every day, the growth I have to have is I have to build the quality of discipline. If I don't learn what it means to build and break habits, I can set any goal I want, but it will never happen if I don't understand how to build and break a habit. And so what I'm really fascinated by is saying, have your goal, but ask yourself, what's the growth? What's the quality? What's the attitude? What's the attribute? What's the trait that I need to grow in order to reach that goal? Because that's often the missing link in all of our goal setting. So whatever goal you have, maybe your goal this year is to get promoted. Maybe your goal this year is to work in a different area of the business. Maybe your goal this year, whatever it may be, those are great. But if you don't understand, actually, well, if I want to get promoted, then maybe I need to understand and communicate with the people that I work with. What does that require? What does that mean? So my growth is communication. I need to become a better communicator. Maybe there's a skill that's needed in the organization that I've understood that I need to develop. Let me develop that skill. Because if I'm just chasing the promotion or whatever else it may be, it probably won't happen because there's a hidden growth period. And that's what I found in my career as we've pivoted. I found this when developing people that work with me. I'm more fascinated by the growth they want to make than the goal that they say they have.
Amazing. That's great advice. So you're a source of inspiration to many around the world, but I'm curious, who or what inspires you?
I'll be honest and say that what inspires me the most is sitting in a room of seekers like all of you, sitting in a room full of people who are eager and earnest and open and trying their best and working hard even when it's really, really hard, and pushing themselves even when it's really uncomfortable. And everyone who's sitting in discomfort is someone who inspires me, because sitting in discomfort is one of the most difficult things in the world to do. And the fact that you're all here trying to be better and trying to grow, I want to give you the opposite advice, is please be kinder to yourself for doing that, for showing up for yourself. Please be more compassionate to yourself, giving yourself the space, that the fact that you came here. And the reason it inspires me is because I've been doing this for nearly 18 years now, and I've done it in rooms of 2 people and 5 people. And we were just talking outside that before mindfulness and meditation became somewhat, and I don't think we're even close to it being mainstream, but somewhat became more involved in the major conversation around the world, I could never have imagined when I started my journey that this many people would even care and would prioritize it and make it a daily practice. And so this inspires me, sitting in this auditorium with every single one of you who are trying your best, even when it's hard, even when you have personal things going on, family things going on. You know, there's so much going on in all of our lives, and you've chosen to be here to hope that you can become better and feel better and figure it out. To me, that is the most inspiring thing and always will be, because I'm on the journey with you too. I haven't figured it out. I'm still figuring it out. And I get inspiration seeing that you're on the path just like I am.
All right. Well, Jay, we're just so grateful to have had you here today. Thank you for spending time with us. And thank you to a great audience for participating along with us.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. So nice to meet you all. Thank you.